Welcome to Audiogyan with Kedar Nimkar, a podcast that documents insightful conversations with Indian designers, artists, musicians, writers, thinkers, and creatives of all types. Catch us on iTunes or visit audiogyan.com for more Gyan sessions. Here's your host, Kedar Nimkar.
Today, I have Giulia Ambrogi with us on Audiogyan. She's a co-founder and a curator of a non-profit organization, St+art India Foundation, which has been making waves in the Indian street art movement. It aims to make our streets more interactive through the medium of urban art festivals across India. They have been instrumental in improving the aesthetics of cities like Delhi, Hyderabad, Bangalore, and Mumbai. And today we are here to discover what goes in making it happen. Thank you, Julia, for giving us your time, and welcome to Audiogyan.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So, it's a pleasure to talk about art in general, and obviously, I would like to cover a topic which is street art movement in India.
Yes.
So to begin with, just to set context, can you tell us briefly what is Street Art Project about? I mean, since when is it active, and what you guys do exactly in the project?
Sure. So we started in 2014. We met during a very small project called Kirki Extension. It was like sort of one of a kind of street art project. It was the very first in India, in Delhi. And one of the co-founder, like Hanif Qureshi, was part of the project. And then there were other artists such as Amitabh Kumar, Anpu, Yantra, that basically were experimenting on the walls in a very initial sort of way. And we kind of all felt that the reaction of people in this urban village of Kirki in Delhi were absolutely amazing and so inspiring and motivating. And also the outcome of the pieces in the sort of reimagination of this neighborhood was something extremely promising and extremely exciting to work more on. And therefore, we decided to do our first festival, which was in Delhi in 2014. And, it was made out of passion, out of the support of friends, which were street artists from across the world. So it was literally a sort of very spontaneous aggregation. But then what happened right after is that the feedback that we got from people, from government, from artists themselves were, literally stimulating. And so we decided to create the NGO because every one of us, even working in different fields. So Akshat Noryal was documenting alternative cultural realities in India through his channel called Now Delhi. Arjun Behel, who's the festival director, was working in the music environment. Tanish was working with him, and Hanif was a graphic designer, but also an artist, and I was a curator back in Italy, also of street art projects. So we all thought that we need more alternative avenues for art to spread across our cities and going out from the sort of sterile environments of galleries and museums, and also to create platform for cultural exchange, platform for artists to engage and interact together. So it was a sort of mix of reasons why to experiment this form. And one of them was also that Indian streets are full of people, and there is a very thin line between what is public and what is private. A lot of people live and work in the streets, but eventually those streets are also pretty neglected a lot of time. So how to generate an awareness about our public spaces, how to make our public spaces more livable, more sustainable, more engaging. And the only tool that we know is art. And so that's how we started.
Interesting. I also did an interview with Amitabh Kumar, so I got some insights onto the overall project. But the follow-up question which I would like to ask you is like, what is the importance of like murals in general in society? I mean, how and like what changes happen in the cityscape if if walls are painted or murals are done, as per your understanding?
Well, I mean, I see that there are many changes and a lot of consequences, which at times are also sort of unpredictable. But the most predictable ones are that, according to the approach that an institution or an artist has in the streets, the main thing is to be very site specific as much as it could be, and therefore sort of like speaking about local narratives, interacting with the architecture, interacting with the stories and history of the space in which one's work. And eventually what this means is that there is like a very strong sense of belonging that gets generated out of it. So like the local communities or the residents of the area, and at times, like, in the case of like very big murals, like I don't know who of you that are listening, like saw Dada Safalke mural on MTNL building in Bandra Reclamation Bridge, or recently, like we've done large mural of Gandhi getting out of a train on Churchgate Station. Now, those are like sort of symbols. And we need symbols. We need symbols to recognize ourselves in cities which might become alienating. We need symbols to sort of surprise, get surprises on our daily life, which are like very functional somehow. Everything has a function, while art doesn't per se, but eventually it has the function of letting you reimagine what surrounds you, and that's the source of life, I think. And no matter the background that you have or your upbringing, everyone can connect very easily with a large scale work in different manners, according obviously on how you read the piece, but also if you read it on a very first layer, like the point is the surprise of something that wasn't there. And we never question our spaces when it comes to a Vodafone board or a Starbucks board. It's kind of taken for granted that this visual pollution is part of our daily life. But
Correct.
What happens when you have art which doesn't respond to any function per se, then you start wondering and you start being curious, wanting to know more, wanting to also interact. What happens a lot of time is that people start talking about their public spaces because they see something very unexpected, and so they wonder why. And this dialogue is what is like the most efficient manner to actually starting to have an awareness about where we live, and therefore also becoming more careful. So a lot of times, the very one of the beautiful consequences is that the spaces in which we started working, like being a Lodi art district, being a Mahim art district, or Makta art district in Hyderabad, is that the residents themselves started to kind of own the place, and feeling that, wow, these people and these artists brought such a brightness in our lives and such important inputs, and now we are the one that have to be the keepers of this place, and therefore, littering sort of kind of stops or almost, and kind of new activities are coming up, microeconomy are sort of also getting activated, and in general, again, there is a sense of respect because of the sense of belonging that gets generated. So I guess that's one of the major part that street artworks can contribute to a city.
Correct. In fact, I did a recent interview with Atul Pethe, and he's a big playwright from Pune, and we were discussing about how cities are getting flattened in terms of their culture, in terms of their architecture, in terms of their structure overall. I mean, if you go to a core of Bombay, core of Delhi, or core of Bangalore, the places look pretty much flat, the same. So these murals also help, as you mentioned, bring a sense of identity to the overall space as well, right? And
Totally, yeah.
yes, 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 brilliant. Um Julia, I want to ask you, since you pick these places like the Sassoon Dock project, also, which we'll talk about briefly later, but the Lodi district or places like these. So, do these art forms need to be site specific? I mean, how do you pick your canvas?
Yeah, so like there are like different criteria. Let's put it in this manner. Like when it comes to Lodi Art District, what happened is that in Delhi you have very limited public spaces in which people can freely go take a walk, being there, just just being there, seriously. And a lot of time, malls are considered to be public spaces, but they are not really, because I mean they are first of all informed by private interests, and secondly, there is a frisking system. It's not that everyone steps into a mall, right?
Correct.
And then there are like very few parks, but Delhi is not really a walking friendly place, unluckily. So we kind of started like looking around, and then we just bump into this place like Lodi Colony, and we've noticed that there were like broad sidewalks, there was greenery, there was not that much traffic, it was very pedestrian friendly, and at the same time it had like all these big walls, which are all the same, and so they are like beautiful canvases. And on top of it is also like fairly central, so it's easily reachable with the metro. It's very close to Lodi Garden. But if you were Googling before Lodi Colony, nothing was coming up. Images of Lodi Garden were coming up. So to echo also your comment about like creating identities for the cities, that's an extremely important comment, because what happened is that, in Delhi you have Red Fort, Humayun's Tomb, like Lodi Garden, all these amazing heritage places. But what are we doing in the present for the future? Like, what is the present identity that we want to sort of create for our cities? And then that's where we thought that Lodi was just the perfect place to kind of create a area of interest in the city, both for citizens and for tourists. Because eventually, tourists comes after the citizens, and a lot of time there is also this sort of misunderstanding that, a lot of programming or, I don't know, like events, like it's just, let's get tourism in. No, like first of all, you have to work for the city, and then tourism comes like sort of automatically,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like basically Lodi Art District was just perfect to have an environment which was airy, green, pleasant in general to walk around, and so we picked it, and it belongs also to the government. It belongs to CPWD. So another good aspect of it is that in the world, a lot of times street art projects generated a sort of gentrification, which we would like to stay a little bit away from. So working with the government is also like a very good part of it, because you can really create policies towards public spaces, towards how to interact and see public spaces. And yeah, so like Lodi Colony was chosen out of all these reasons. To give you another example, like Sassoon was chosen because we were really looking at like some sort of warehouse, abandoned, characteristic space, which could already have like a lot of stories around, like stories about Bombay,
Mm-hmm.
What is the DNA of Bombay? Is like a port city. I mean, it was all made by trades, right?
Correct.
But now it's like super fastly growing. So also these sort of local identities are getting sort of forgotten, and nothing. So we were searching places. We always look around, look up, walk a lot in the cities, and we got to know about Sassoon Dock. So we went there and we started discovering that yes, a lot of people in Bombay knows what Sassoon Dock is, but mostly no one ever been there.
Correct.
And we just bump into these like two warehouses, abandoned, super dirty, very difficult place to work in because I mean mainly it's like the biggest whole fish market of Bombay. So just like the fishermen tribes are there, but we got so stimulated because it is the oldest dock of the city of Mumbai, so it's where literally Mumbai started, and it's surrounded by contemporary art galleries, the Taj, and Colaba Causeway, all these amazing places.
Kalagoda,
And
yeah.
then Kalagoda. So it's already extremely relevant for the DNA of the city. But again, one of those locations which were completely undiscovered. And what street art does a lot of time is that it adds a layer on what is already present. It adds a layer of imagination, a layer of understanding, a layer of beauty. It basically rediscover assets, rediscover stories, and Sassoon-Dock was just perfect for that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also how the exhibition kind of panned out, because it was mainly inspired by local narratives, by the traditions of the fishermen tribes, by local elements and visuals. So the artists used fishnets, crates, baskets, all the materials which you see around and which are majorly functional, have been sort of reimagined completely through art forms. So yeah,
Correct.
how we pick and choose.
Yeah, just to dig deeper into this, is there any parameter as to, say, suppose Lodi district or Sassoon Dock, as you mentioned, the nets, the fishermen, the overall tribe, the overall vibe it has?
Yeah.
Do you intentionally pick up elements which are very local, or is it uh, you have something envisioned to make the place look like? You got what I mean? It's
Yeah.
you have an art form, or you have something to be expressed which is already there, but it may or may not sync with that particular site. So what the process which goes into making that happen?
See, basically, what we do is that our process goes a little bit in this way. We pick a location because of again the sort of beautiful characteristic that it has within the cityscape and within the city history. And then we start researching on it, which means that basically we start researching about the architecture, the residents, the function of that particular place in the city, and we form sort of working PDFs, out of which obviously we kind of already know that okay, this particular artist can be perfect in this particular environment because of the previous work of the artist, right? So we invite a set of artists that we feel will respond in a very appropriate and good manner to the context. And we send the artist all the information about it. That's particularly my work because I'm the curator of the foundation, right? So I always also, many times, I already have precise sort of suggestions for the artist to start thinking about the installation or the mural that he or she is going to paint. But then there is always a very large margin of improvisation once the artist comes on situ, on site, and so really feels and breathes and experience the entire place. But yeah, there is a sort of suggestions and inputs that we always like to give to the artists. So the visuals which surround a place like Sassoon-Dock are so characteristic, are so stimulating, and also they can relate with our main public, which were the people of the dock themselves. Now, leaving this aside, obviously we had thousands and thousands of visitors, which were like belonging to very different backgrounds, very different parts of Bombay or India, or actually the world, by the way. But eventually, it wasn't an invasion. Like, what we want to do is we want to gel with the context, right? So using also local materials is very important. Then, as said, if an artist has a brilliant idea that can anyhow speak about the city, India, like the feeling that the artist also had, and the idea is interesting, then we are very, very much open to explore and go also a little bit out of of the suggestions basically given.
Correct. Yeah. Um, Interesting. So, Julia, another thing which I wanted to ask you was, since these artworks are always out there in public and in public spaces, you as a festival director or curator, how do you like manage to find the balance between giving that artist the freedom and yet having the limitations of being it a public art? You know what I mean, right? Like it's a
Yeah,
kind of a tricky
totally.
question.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, um, let's say that it's tricky, but I guess that all the tricky things are also the most challenging and worth of an exploration. So at times, limitations are also very, very prolific for the artists themselves because they have to sort of approach their own work as well and the space with those limitations as well. Now, usually we give very little limitations, which are also the very basic ones. Like we are an NGO, we are a foundation. We don't want to sort of stand for any political parties, for instance. We can stand for causes, that's for sure. Like we want to stand for causes such as environmental sustainability or, like democracy or equality. So these large causes, definitely we want to take a stand for, but not in a political manner, more in a sort of call for awareness. So that means also that obviously our sort of requirement for the artist is like not to go political against, like one party or the other, because that's not what we want to do. We want to join people. We don't want to divide people, Or also when it comes to nudity, we all know that in India, nudity is a sort of taboo, right?
Yeah.
So you won't trigger any constructive dialogue. You will just shut the people off or piss them off. And that's not what we think is a constructive dialogue, So I think that all these kinds of limitations are the ones that are actually culturally embedded and that we have to take into consideration just to create, as I said, a constructive dialogue rather than create a shock effect or a sort of fight effect. So so eventually I think that those limitations are still okay. And then it's a lot of work to be able not to restrict too much the artists. What I'm trying to say is that it's a lot of work with the residents of places in which we work. It's a lot of work with the government as well. And then at times compromises are integral part of our game because we do public art, right? So there are many actors. We are one actor, the artists are another one, the government is another one, then the residents, so public art is public because it has to be site specific, it has to relate to all the parts, and so it's fine to be the moderator of these initial discussion, basically.
Yeah. I'm sure it must be a very tactful job because an artist would like to explore like creativity in all possible dimensions, but given the constraints, uh, there must be a lot of instances where do you like there are there instances where you have to intervene to change the narrative itself because
yes, there were. There were.
Yeah.
And it was painful.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it
And,
was really painful. I mean, we had like a couple of very, very delicate cases, I must say.
mm-hmm.
Um, the point is that, see, like we contact the artists most of the times, like much more in advance. So
Mm-hmm.
we start our Skype conversation. We start like, trying to build a trust within each other. So there has been, frankly speaking, just like a couple of cases which were uh, really on the borderline of being awful because of like really very controversial
Correct.
sort of like problems. But otherwise, like we like I mean we already chose artists that out of their portfolio, they seem to be very sensitive and respectful and nice in general. And then if after like a couple of Skype calls we see that, oh my God, no, this can create some problems,
Correct.
then very politely we kind of step out from the game, And so, yeah, that's what we try to do in advance, basically. Then as
Mm-hmm.
said, a couple of times was awful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I remember Amitabh also saying that it's an evolving process because people people either spit on the murals, people do all sorts of things, at least in India, and then the whole artwork evolves in a different direction because it takes probably weeks or days to finish the artwork, and then it changes in the course of action itself.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. I mean, at
cool.
times also the littering comes from the political parties as well. So
Yeah,
at times, like, we fight also in that sense because we are like, wait a second, those properties are governative properties.
correct.
We are working towards regeneration. And then after a month, like, you have like shitloads of like political posters coming up. Like, I mean, what's wrong? Like, so
Yeah,
that sounds like also there's the same one that are like actually, in charge of Swat and whatever. And they are the first one of like,
yeah,
creating and spoiling at times. So yeah, it's a little tricky, but I mean, we better not to be discouraged by that, right?
correct. Yeah, actually, that naturally
Yeah.
flows into my like second last question, which I have. So, if we can safely say that street art India is an act of improving urban aesthetics, where are we are still like a long way to go in India, at least, right? So, what is your thought behind like how much time it will take? What's your idea of basically aesthetically beautiful surroundings within cities or other rural areas as well?
Well, I mean, very difficult question for many reasons. Like, first reason is because India is huge and has very different dynamics from
Mm-hmm.
urban, urban to rural areas. Second reason is because like cities are growing so fast
Mm-hmm.
that it's a very fluid system, right? So how much time will it take? Oh, God knows. I mean, like it also really depends on how city will grow. Generally, I think that India is a country of amazing creativity. Amazing creativity. If you look at, the pawn shops
Mm-hmm.
or like I mean the very small shops like nested in very small corners and super optimized in terms of like using the space and displaying their goods in a very nice manner as well.
Mm-hmm.
So creativity is literally everywhere. The point is that again, it's an awareness about public spaces, and it's like a very sort of rooted kind of characteristic. Like what is cleanliness? Like it's a very sort of shaky concept, because
Correct.
I mean, for someone like cleanliness can be one thing, and for some others can be a very different thing.
Mm-hmm.
But what we notice is that when you create those spots of awareness, when you create those spots in which all of a sudden, from being extremely dirty, you clean up, you
Mm-hmm.
regenerate the space completely, then people understand immediately the value of it.
Correct.
They understand immediately how much more pleasant is to work and to
Correct.
walk by
Mm-hmm.
those places.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm trying to say is that examples needs to be set up, needs to be pushed on, and it takes a long time, but it's possible. We see those like improvements all the time. Again, also in Sassoon-Dock, before Mumbai Port Trust obviously was crucial, the collaboration with them. They cleaned all the streets and they're still doing it. But the very important part is that we went back and we did like some interviews with the locals, and they were saying like, we are the first ones that understood how to maintain the space clean, and that we understood that it's so good when it's clean. And also by seeing all these people coming, taking photos, even though the exhibition is closed, like a lot of people are still going. So again, the sense of pride that I was speaking about initially, that's what also generates sense of ownership and belonging, and therefore also these like important consequences. Say that, I think that to be like for the urban spaces to be beautiful, they have to respond to the people who are living there, so respond to the cultural sort of instances, visuals. I mean, they have to be original, contemporary, but still very much radicated in what the space is. And that's the only way in which it can gel with the people, with the context, with the environment, with everything, and being beautiful. Because a lot of time when you import models from abroad, a lot of time it doesn't work. It doesn't work because that particular idea of beauty has been generated through and because of totally different criteria and totally different way of thinking, So it has to be site specific to be visually appealing and to be sustainable on the long run.
Correct.
Yeah, and then I hope that basically the point is that you never do things by your own. And
it's a collaboration.
Yes. And this collaboration needs to be brought over by private institutions, NGOs, government, citizens. I mean, there has to be more sort of avenues to create those spots of collaboration.
Correct.
But I think that people are very much ready, and that's the good part of it.
Yeah. And that was pretty evident during the Sassoon-Dock project, especially. So I believe Sassoon-Dock was the latest work by Street Art, right? So what's coming up? What should we look forward to?
Well, yeah. So it was really the last one right after Sassoon-Dock, since we are crazy, and we've done a festival, a project in Hyderabad, one in Goa, one in Calcutta, and one in Chandigarh. But they were smaller projects, let's put it in this manner. What's coming up next? I mean, many things are cooking. Some of them are still sort of not really secret. It's just that we don't know if they will go through. But mostly we are going to work more on the cities in which we worked already, meaning we would love to do another Sassoon-Dock project.
Okay.
We put a lot of effort, and we really do believe that to have long-lasting results, you need to engage not once, but twice, thrice, with the same people, with the same place. And then you really see things changing for good for the longest time. So we would love to go there again, creating a completely different immersive experience, working much more and in a much deeper manner with the local communities, and creating a very engaging sort of process. We are going to be back in Lodi, our district, as well, in February 2019. Again, in a very different format. So murals will be there, of course, but we are going to work with traditional street performers, contemporary street performers. It will be basically a sort of 2-month calendar in which we hope to join together many, many different communities which are living public spaces in creative manners. Can be a crazy bicycle community that that does bicycle tours in costumes. Basically, who all is living the city in a creative manner. So that would be a little bit the idea, along with a lot of art in terms of murals, pop-up exhibitions, performances, and installations. And then we are going to go back to Hyderabad and Goa, which are like our annual appointment, thanks to the collaboration with in Hyderabad with Art Telangana and Kalakriti Foundation, and in Goa with Serendipity Art Festival. And then most likely we are going to have one new city, which is Coimbatore.
Nice.
Which we find it to be very interesting because it's like in the line of the Smart City project. So there is like a lot of scope again to create value in the city through art. So that's largely the plan.
Yeah, superb. Lots to look forward to. I think,
I hope so.
yeah. I think this is a good note to end this. Obviously, I have like tons of questions just on Sassoon project, but maybe we can schedule another interview for this. But people, so I like on a closing note, I would like to tell people that you guys can follow START India on Instagram and follow Street Art India's work. And I believe you don't have a website right now, right? There was a website, but
Our website is under construction. It's a big construction since we've done like many projects, and so it's still down. But Instagram is very much up and about. Yeah,
definitely. All right, Giulia, thanks a lot for giving us your time, and it was really pleasure talking to you. And I just given the time constraint, otherwise I have like few more questions, but let's keep it for a next session.
Absolutely.
So, thanks a lot. It was pleasure.
Thank you so much. See you soon and speak to you soon. Bye. Bye.
And that's it from today's Gyan session. Catch us on iTunes, Saavn, Stitcher, or any podcasting app you use. Do rate us on iTunes and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Stay tuned for more Gyan on Audiogyan.com. Till then, bye.